Fool's Carnival follows a ragtag troupe of misfit performers struggling to keep their dying carnival alive. Led by the ever-hopeful but worn-down ringmaster, Sal Marconi, they wander from town to town, battling sabotage, debt, and their own chaotic dysfunctions. From explosive inventions to runaway clowns and shady deals, every day threatens disaster, but laughter, loyalty, and stubborn hope keep them standing. When a powerful businessman seeks to shut them down for good, the fools must unite, not just to save their carnival, but to prove that wonder still has a place in a world that's forgotten how to dream. The morning was a reluctant thing, grey and soggy, as the rattling carnival wagon crept into the outskirts of Miltown. The wheels, metal-rimmed and whining against the cracked pavement, bore the faded colors of a once bright emblem, a grinning jester juggling flaming torches. Now, the flames looked more like smudges of soot, the jester's grin stretched thin and weary. Alongside the wagon, a motley procession of performers and staff spilled out, each dragging their own share of baggage, both literal and figurative. Sal Marconi, tall and gaunt, with a top hat that had seen better decades, surveyed the scene with a mixture of grim amusement and stubborn hope. His patched ringmaster coat flapped in the chilly breeze, a ragged banner for the Fool's Carnival. Years of losses weighed on his shoulders, but his eyes still sparkled with the reckless optimism that had kept the carnival limping along. "All right, you beautiful fools," Sal called, climbing atop a battered wooden crate beside the wagon. His voice was rough, but carried the unmistakable cadence of a ringmaster used to commanding attention. "This town thinks it's seen all the entertainment it needs. We're here to prove them wrong, again." Maggie Mags O'Hara, short and athletic, her dark hair pulled tight into a practical bun, crossed her arms and shot him a skeptical look. "Sal, we've been rolling into towns like this for years. The crowds are shrinking, and the cops keep eyeing our permits like they're waiting to pounce." Sal grinned, sardonic but sincere. "And yet, here we are. The show must go on, Mags, always. Because if we don't, who will?" Around them, the troupe set about their tasks. Eddie E.C. Collins, the eccentric inventor, was already crouched beneath a rickety contraption that looked like a cross between a Ferris wheel and a blender. Grease-stained fingers fiddled with wires and gears, his thick glasses slipping down his nose as he muttered to himself. Nearby, Lulu the clown bounced on oversized shoes, her bright makeup and patched costume a stark contrast to the peeling paint on the tents. Harold the snake Jenkins slinked through the group, his slicked back hair glinting in the weak sunlight. He eyed the makeshift booths, already plotting ways to turn a quick buck, no matter the cost. Betty, the quiet ticket seller, kept a watchful eye on the dwindling supplies, her mysterious past a silent shadow hanging over the carnival's fragile order. Tommy, the gentle giant strongman, helped hoist a sagging tent pole, his slow smile encouraging but tinged with exhaustion. Nina, the fortune teller, draped in flowing scarves, whispered cryptic predictions to no one in particular. The first attempt at drawing in a crowd was a rigged ring toss. Masterminded by Harold, they had hoped the game's illusion of easy wins would lure in the curious. Instead, it backfired spectacularly. A local boy caught onto the trick and loudly called out the scam, sending a ripple of laughter and derision through the sparse gathering. The few onlookers shuffled away, unimpressed and unamused. Maggie's temper flared. "Great, that's just great. Now they think we're thieves, not performers." Sal sighed but softened. "It's a rough start, happens every time, but that's why we keep trying." As afternoon bled into evening, the troupe gathered for a lackluster performance under the main tent. The faded lights flickered, and the sound system crackled with static. Sal took center stage, his voice booming with practiced enthusiasm. Yet the crowd's polite claps felt more like a merciful gesture than genuine applause. Lulu tried to salvage the mood with a pratfall, but her oversized shoes caught a loose rope, sending a cluster of colorful balloons tumbling into a heap of dirty canvas. The troupe exchanged wary glances, torn between frustration and laughter. It was, in many ways, a perfect mirror of the carnival itself, chaotic, flawed, but undeniably alive. As the night deepened and the crowd thinned, Sal lingered a moment longer beneath the flickering lights. He glanced at his troupage, a patchwork of quirks and scars, and felt the familiar tug of hope. They were fools, perhaps, but fools who refused to quit. "Tomorrow," he muttered, half to himself, "we try again." And so the Fools' Carnival settled into Milltown, a circus of misfits clinging to a dream that danced just beyond reach. In the shadows of peeling tents and rusting rides, amid the scent of stale popcorn and sawdust, their story began, Unawan absurd. Hopeful farce played out beneath the indifferent stars. The sun dipped low behind the cracked and faded tents of the Fools' Carnival, casting long shadows that stretched across the uneven dirt lot like weary fingers. The air was thick with the mingled scents of stale popcorn, sawdust, and something vaguely metallic, perhaps the remnants of last night's failed fire-eating act. As the troupe gathered beneath the sagging canvas of the main tent, the first notes of discord began to hum quietly beneath the surface of their shared dream. Sal Marconi, the carnival's indefatigable ringmaster, stood tall despite the weariness clinging to his gaunt frame. His patched coat, once a dazzling red, now a mosaic of faded fabric and hastily sewn patches, billowed slightly in the evening breeze. Perched atop his head was the battered top hat that had become his crown and shield against the world's indifference. He tapped a piece of chalk against a grimy blackboard, its surface scarred by years of half-erased plans and hopeful slogans. "All right, team," Sal began, his voice carrying a theatrical flourish that belied the sinking feeling in his gut. "We've got to think bigger, bolder. The usual rigged games and tired tricks won't cut it anymore. We need something fresh, something spectacular, something that will make the townsfolk flock to our gates like moths to a flame." Maggie O'Hara, arms crossed and brow furrowed, leaned against a leaning pole, the muscles in her short frame taut like a coiled spring. Her dark hair was pulled back tightly, strands escaping only when her temper flared. "Spectacular," she repeated, voice dripping with sarcasm. "Like last time's spectacular, when your brilliant plan turned the dunk tank into a swamp and scared off half the kids." Sal gave her a sidelong grin, unshaken. "Details, details. Every great show has its mishaps. It builds character. Character doesn't pay the bills, Sal." Maggie shot back, eyes flashing. "Neither does your endless optimism." The room seemed to tighten around them, the air charged with the friction of opposing forces. Sal's idealism, a fragile balloon inflated by hope, met Maggie's grounded pragmatism, sharp and unyielding as shattered glass. Before the tension could escalate further, a low sputtering noise interrupted the exchange. Eddie Collins, the carnival's resident inventor and technician, crouched nearby amidst a chaotic tangle of wires, gears, and odd bits of metal scavenged from forgotten junkyards. His thick glasses were smeared with grease, and his wild hair stuck out in every direction as if charged by static electricity. "Almost ready," Eddie murmured to himself, oblivious to the charged atmosphere. "Just need to adjust the timing on the sprocket under. There." He gave a triumphant twist to a knob, and the contraption whirred to life, emitting a series of clanks and sputters that quickly escalated into a wheezy whistle. Nearby, Lulu the clown bounded through the scene like a whirlwind of color, her oversized shoes squeaking against the wooden planks. Her face, painted with bright white makeup and exaggerated red lips, was alight with mischief and childlike glee. She juggled a trio of rubber chickens, honking each one as it left her hands, her laughter ringing clear and infectious. "Watch this, gang," Lulu called, launching into a slapstick routine that involved a pie, a bucket of confetti, and an unfortunately placed stack of carnival prizes. With a dramatic flourish, she slipped on a banana peelan, actual banana peel, salvaged from a vendor's cart, and sent the confetti flying into the air. The shower of colorful bits rained down, obscuring a teetering tower of stuffed animals that collapsed with a thunderous crash. "Lulu," Maggie groaned, rushing to steady the toppled prizes. "You're going to get us shut down." Lulu grinned, undeterred. "But at least they're laughing." Sal chuckled, despite himself, the corners of his mouth twitching upward. "See, chaos has its charm." The troupe's interactions unfolded like a circus within a circus, a kaleidoscope of clashing hopes and clumsy camaraderie. Sal's endless optimism pushed them forward, a beacon in the fog of their perpetual struggle. Maggie's sharp tongue and quick reflexes kept the group tethered to reality, even as she fought against the weight of her own cynicism. Eddie's inventions promised salvation, even if they came wrapped in sparks and smoke. Lulu's infectious joy, though a source of chaos, reminded them all of why they endured. As dusk deepened into night, the carnival took on an aura both melancholic and magical. The flickering string lights cast dancing shadows on peeling paint and fraying tents, while the distant hoot of an owl punctuated the murmurs of the troupe's heated debate. "Maybe Sal's right," Eddie said softly, wiping grease from his hands. "Maybe we do need something spectacular. Something truly ours." Maggie snorted, folding her arms tighter. "Or maybe we just need to stop tripping over our own feet." Sal's eyes twinkled beneath his battered top hat. "Either way, we keep moving, because if we don't, who will?" The evening ended not with resolution, but with the promise of more chaos, more clashes, and more laughter. The Fool's Carnival was a mess, a beautiful, absurd mess, and its performers were bound together by something stubborn and unbreakable. The shared dream that kept them spinning on, no matter how many times they fell. As the troupe dispersed to their various corners of the carnival, the sound of Lulu's honking laughter echoed once more, a joyful defiance against the gathering night. Somewhere in the distance, a wheel creaked, and a faint melody from a broken calliope wavered on the Brisa Ragtag symphony for the fools who dared to dream. And so, beneath the patchwork sky, the carnival breathed, alive with quirks and quarrels, its heart beating erratically but fiercely, ready to face whatever chaos tomorrow might bring. So, Sal mused aloud, to no one in particular, breaking the fourth wall with a sardonic smile. What could possibly go wrong next? The answer, as always, was everything. The sun had barely begun to dip behind the tired horizon when the Fool's Carnival, a motley collection of faded tents and flickering neon bulbs, buzzed with a nervous energy. Tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight, Sal Marconi's big plan to rig the ring toss game was set to turn the tide. The carnival, as always, was more a jumble of hopeful chaos than well-oiled machinery. But there was a brittle optimism in the air, like the tentative first notes of a song that might just catch fire. Sal stood tall beside the ring toss booth, his gaunt figure framed by the patchwork glow of neon lights struggling against the dusk. His eyes scanned the sparse crowd, families wondering uncertainly, teenagers daring each other to try their luck, the occasional lonely wanderer drawn in by the promise of a distraction from their day-to-day drudgery. His patched ringmaster coat flapped slightly in the cool breeze, the top hat perched at a rakish angle. He gave the nod, a flicker of a sardonic smile tugging at his lips. "All right, Harold," he whispered, "make it work." Harold, the Snake Jenkins, slicked back hair gleaming under the neon, was already at work. His shifty eyes darted as he expertly adjusted the bottles, setting them ever so slightly off-centered, just enough to make the rings land with a deceptive ease for the right players. He was the Carnival's hustler, the man who could talk his way past suspicion or, if need be, cover a mess with a wink and a crooked smile. Tonight, he was the key to their salvation. Maggie O'Hara, ever the pragmatist, lingered nearby, arms crossed, watching the preparations with a wary eye. Her short, athletic frame was poised for action, dark hair tied back to keep her vision clear. She didn't trust these schemes, never had, but she understood their necessity. The Carnival needed a win, a spark to ignite the dwindling interest. But Maggie's instincts, honed on the unforgiving streets of her past, whispered caution. The crowd began to gather, the hum of chatter blending with the scent of buttered popcorn and the distant calliope music. Lulu the clown, adorned in her bright makeup and oversized shoes, bounced about with childlike glee, juggling rubber chickens and throwing exaggerated smiles. She was the heart of the Carnival's charm, even if her clumsiness sometimes added to the chaos rather than alleviating it. As the first customers approached the rigged ring toss, Harold leaned in, whispering instructions to select players while Sal narrated with a flourish, his voice booming to draw attention. The rings flew through the air, arcing perfectly, landing with satisfying clinks against the bottles. Cheers erupted, and for a moment, it seemed the plan was working. Money flowed in, pockets jingled with the small profits. But then, as fate would have it, Lulu's enthusiastic antics took a disastrous turn. In her eagerness to entertain, she tripped over a loose cable, sending a cascade of bottles crashing to the ground with a thunderous clatter. The crowd gasped, laughter turning quickly to murmurs of suspicion. Eyes narrowed, whispers spread like wildfire. The rigged game was outed in the most spectacular fashion. Maggie's sharp gaze caught the shift immediately. "Sal, this isn't good," she muttered, stepping forward to contain the damage. But the damage was done. The crowd began to disperse, their trust evaporating as fast as the spilled soda from the cracked bottles. Harold, sensing the shifting tide, slipped into the shadows, quickly weaving a web of half-truths and promises to a local official who had been eyeing the Carnival with increasing skepticism. The dim tent where they met smelled of cheap tobacco and stale beer, and Harold's voice was low and urgent. "Just a little hiccup," he assured, "nothing that can't be fixed." Back outside, Sal stood alone at the edge of the now empty lot. The rain had started, cold drops dotting his top hat, his usual sardonic grin faltering as he watched the flickering neon bulbs blink helplessly in the damp air. The humiliation stung, but beneath it was the familiar pulse of stubborn hope. The Carnival was a ship battered by storms, but it still floated. The night ended not with triumph, but with a hard lesson, one that would test the troupe's resolve and their fragile unity. Would they crumble under the weight of failure, or find in this slip-up the fuel to rise again? The question hung heavy, but Sal's voice, breaking the fourth wall with its usual sardonic edge, promised the story was far from over. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said to no one but the night itself, "sometimes the best show is the one you never planned." And with that, the Fool's Carnival braced itself for whatever absurd disaster came next. The sun dipped low behind the dusty horizon as the rattling caravan wheels came to a reluctant halt on the uneven ground of the small town's outskirts. The Fool's Carnival had arrived once again, its faded banners fluttering weakly in the dry wind. But this time, the air was thick with an unfamiliar tension, as if the dust itself whispered warnings of an impending storm. Salvador Sal Marconi, tall and gaunt, stepped down from his battered wagon, the hem of his patched ringmaster coat brushing against the rough earth. His top hat, slightly crooked from the journey, seemed to carry the weight of years spent chasing a dream that never quite caught fire. Yet his eyes sparkled with the same reckless optimism that had kept the carnival alive through countless failures. As the troupe gathered, sorting out the tangle of ropes and faded tents, a sleek black car rolled slowly onto the grounds, its tires hissing against the gravel. The vehicle's glossy paint reflected the setting sun, a stark contrast to the carnival's peeling paint and creaking wood. The car door opened with a practiced smoothness, and out stepped Victor Langford, the man whose arrival would mark a turning point none of them could ignore. Victor was every inch the polished businessman, his tailored suit crisp and dark, a sharp contrast to the carnival's motley crew. His shoes tapped authoritatively on the gravel, each step measured and deliberate. A smile, too perfect to be genuine, played on his lips as he surveyed the carnival like a man appraising outdated merchandise. "Good evening," Victor announced, his voice calm but carrying an unmistakable edge. "I'm here on behalf of the town's investors. We've been reviewing the future of this space, and it's clear that the Fool's Carnival, while charming in a nostalgic sort of way, is no longer viable." Murmurs rippled through the troupe. Maggie Maggs O'Hara's brow furrowed, her arms crossing tightly over her athletic frame. She had seen too many things go wrong to buy into platitudes. "Viable or not, it's our home," she snapped, her voice sharp. "And we're not just going to roll over because some suited suit says so." Sal stepped forward, hands raised in a calming gesture, his voice carrying the flair of a ringmaster but edged with sincerity. "Victor, we understand change is part of progress, but the Fool's Carnival is more than just rides and games. It's a livelihood, a family, a story that's been told through generations. We're not just a business, we're a community." Victor's smile tightened imperceptibly. "I appreciate your passion, Sal, truly. But the investors see an opportunity to bring modern entertainment to corporate amusement park with all the bells and whistles. It's a step into the future for this town." Lulu the clown, bright makeup and oversized shoes catching the last rays of light, bounced forward with a cheerful grin, juggling colorful balls in an attempt to break the tension. Who needs bells and whistles when you have pies and pratfalls? Her light-heartedness was met with a few reluctant chuckles, but Victor's gaze barely flickered. Nearby, Harold the Snake Jenkins lurked in the shadows, his slicked-back hair glinting. He whispered into a phone, weaving his own web of schemes as the carnival's fate hung in the balance. Inside the main tent, the worn canvas sagged under the weight of years and neglect, casting long shadows over the gathered troupe. Sal paced before them, his voice rising with fervor. "We've been down before, but this time, it's different. This isn't just about money. It's about keeping our art alive against a world that wants to turn us into a footnote. We have to fight not with fists, but with heart, with the chaos and joy that only our carnival can bring." Maggie's skepticism softened just a fraction as she listened to Sal's plea. The troupe exchanged uncertain glances, the bonds of their found family stretching but not breaking. Outside, Victor made calls to local officials, setting wheels in motion to tighten regulations and impose bureaucratic hurdles. The carnival's permits were questioned, their outdated equipment suddenly a liability. The pressure mounted And with every obstacle, the troupe felt the weight of an uncertain future pressing down on their shoulders. Yet amidst the mounting threat, small acts of resilience flickered. Lulu's laughter echoed through the grounds, a balm to frayed nerves. Harold's dubious deals brought in much-needed cash, however tainted, and Sal's relentless optimism, though sometimes bordering on delusion, kindled a fragile hope. As night fell and the carnival lights flickered to life dim and flickering like a heartbeat, struggling to keep pace, the troupe gathered for a late meeting. Sal's eyes shone with determined fire. We're fools, sure, but fools with a dream worth fighting for. Tomorrow, we start planning. We don't let this place die without a fight. Maggie nodded, the hard edge of her cynicism giving way to a resolute glimmer. Let them come. We'll show them what real chaos looks like. The carnival's future was uncertain, hanging by a thread woven from desperation, hope, and the stubborn refusal to surrender. And as the troupe dispersed into the night, the faint strains of a battered calliope played on, a melancholic tune for the fight to come. But as Sal glanced at the darkened sky, he couldn't help but wonder, was hope enough to keep the Fool's Carnival alive when the world was determined to move on without them?